So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Brendan Yarish, and I'm a legal writer at the Community Legal Education Association, or CLEA. And welcome to the 2022 Law Day events presented by the Manitoba Bar Association and CLEA. The Manitoba Bar Association is a branch of the Canadian Bar Association, an essential ally and advocate for the legal profession. The MBA promotes fair justice systems, facilitates effective law reform, upholds equality in the legal profession, and is devoted to eliminating discrimination. The Community Legal Education Association is a charitable organization that provides legal information to Manitobans and believes legal knowledge is necessary for full and equal participation in our society. On April 17, 1982, Queen Elizabeth II and Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau signed the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, thereby guaranteeing fundamental rights and freedoms for all Canadians. In honor of this milestone, the Canadian Bar Association introduced Law Day in 1983 as a means to commemorate the event and educate the public about the legal system. In lieu of holding an open house at the Winnipeg Law Courts building this year due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we're pleased to present these legal education webinars to help members of the public navigate the legal system. I would also like to acknowledge that the offices of CLEA and the MBA are located in Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Winnipeg's water is sourced from Shoal Lake First Nation. We acknowledge that much harm was done to Indigenous peoples in the past, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation. Today, we're pleased to have Kathy Bueti presenting Criminal Law Rights Upon Detention. Kathy Bueti, a senior associate of Simmonds and Associates, was called to the Manitoba Bar in 2000 and practices in all areas of criminal and youth law. She began her legal career in 1998 as a summer student with Gindin Wolfson Simmonds, as it then was, where she later articled, and worked ultimately as a senior associate. In 2009, Kathy left Gindin Wolfson Simmonds Reutenberg in order to start the partnership that was then Bueti Wasiliu and Associates, and ultimately Bueti Wasiliu Wiebe. Kathy's preferred area of practice is criminal defense, and she has represented clients with charges ranging from traffic offenses to first-degree murder. She has appeared in all levels of court in Canada, including the historic First Supreme Court of Canada hearing held outside of Ottawa. Kathy regularly appears in all levels of court in Manitoba, ranging from administrative tribunals to the Court of Appeal. She has traveled and worked extensively throughout the province, including many northern remote communities, as well as in Western and Southern Ontario. Kathy also practices in the areas of administrative law and civil litigation. In this capacity, she has appeared before administrative tribunals, including the License Suspension Appeal Board and the Driver Improvement and Control Section. She used to practice in the area of immigration law and as such has also appeared before the Immigration and Refugee Protection Division, Immigration Appeal Division, and the Federal Court. Kathy was in the communications branch of the Canadian Armed Forces for 8 years, attaining the rank of captain prior to going to law school. She has had experience with summary investigations, board of inquiries, and court martials. When not in court, Kathy has been the past president and is currently a life bencher of the Law Society of Manitoba. She's the vice president of the Legal Help Center and is a past vice president of Community Legal Education Association. Kathy also teaches at the University of Winnipeg and Canadian Center for Professional Legal Education. She's involved with numerous committees and has presented on a variety of topics at various conferences. Kathy maintains her work-life balance by enjoying lake life. She often works remotely with these two coworkers. In her spare time, Kathy can be found traveling, running, playing old lady soccer, kayaking, swimming, and hiking. So if anyone has any questions for the speaker, please use the Q&A feature rather than the chat, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the presentation. So thank you again, and welcome, Kathy.
I'll just share my screen with you. There we go. You should be seeing that now. So in my bio, normally there's a picture of my two cats. Those would be the two co-workers that I work with remotely. So we're going to talk today about criminal law, rights upon detention. We're going to talk a little bit more than just detention. We're going to talk about coming in contact with the police. We're going to talk about the difference between arrest and detention. And we're going to talk a little bit about search warrants. So there'll be a lot of topics to cover. So you've already heard a little bit about who I am. I've been doing criminal defense work for over 20 years, essentially every type of offense that there is. So in this particular presentation, it's geared towards the general public. There may be some practitioners on the line. This will be very basic rights. I'm not going into in-depth legal issues or anything like that. I'm not considering specific legal issues. I won't be giving legal advice about specific legal problems. Instead, we're going to talk about general legal concepts. So I'll be reviewing when you come in contact with the police, generally what the police should be doing and what you should be doing, and what the police should not be doing and what you have to and don't have to do. So the first area we're going to talk about is what I call sort of random encounters. This is when the police meet you by chance. They're not necessarily out looking for you actively. You're not going to the police station. And this can occur, as you can imagine, anywhere at any time. When you deal with the police, they have to have a reason to be dealing with you. They just can't stop you for no reason. And they should be telling you what that reason is. And you can ask them, why am I being stopped? Why do you want to talk to me? So let's assume that they have a reason to deal with you. They have to be able to identify who you are. So they have to be able to establish your proper legal name, your address, and your date of birth. You're not obliged to provide them any further information than that. So you can hand them a driver's license, you can hand them a treaty card, a government form of identification. And if you don't have identification, you can simply just tell them those pieces of information. If you don't cooperate with them, if you give a false name, if you refuse to answer those questions, you could be charged with an offense. So I want you to keep that in mind. The police need to know who you're dealing with. And in turn, you're allowed to ask their badge numbers and their names in terms of who you're dealing with. Sometimes police officers are in uniform. Sometimes they're in plain clothes. So you're entitled to know which police force they're from, what their capacity is, their rank, their name, their badge number. So when the police can deal with you, so first of all, it has to be for a legitimate purpose. There used to be a time when police officers would just randomly walk up to somebody on the street for no reason, ask them their name, ask them where they're going, what they're doing. They're not allowed to do that. Now, that's not to say it doesn't still happen. Unfortunately, it does, but they're not supposed to be doing that. So let's assume that they have a legitimate reason. What are those reasons? So they have to believe that you've been involved in a crime. So they're conducting an investigation. And most people find it surprising, but it is enough for someone to say that you did something for them to initiate an investigation and to start asking not only you, but other people questions. If you're caught red-handed doing the crime, sometimes that happens, right? They see you committing a driving offense, or maybe somebody phones in that there's a burglary and they catch somebody breaking into a garage or something like that. So if they arrive on scene and the person is in the process of doing what looks to be an illegal activity, that's how they become involved as well. And you're going to hear that there's a number of driving related offenses, whether it's traffic act and things like that, where the police can become involved. So all of those are circumstances where the police can interact with you because of something they think that you've done or that you're in the process of doing at the time. Police can also deal with you randomly without you having done anything. And we see that, and you'll think of it mostly at Christmas time, where they have the sobriety check stop program. They're literally just pulling over cars that are in a particular area at a particular time, and they're just checking to see if you're sober. So those are the general times when the police are allowed to interact and deal with you. So what about when the police deliberately contact you? So that means they're going out of their way, they're trying to find you for whatever reason. So they are allowed to contact members of the public from time to time. Again, there has to be a reason for it. It's not just to check on how you're doing. So they may seek you out in the community. They might come to your home. They might go to your place of work. They may phone you and say, why don't you meet us or come to the station? Those things are permitted. Now, what I want you to take away from this, if you take nothing else away, is that dealing with the police is not like dealing with other people. You may have seen on TV and in the movies, anything you say can and will be used against you. And that's exactly right. And it's not like when you're dealing with a reporter and you can say that something's off the record or you don't want them to repeat what you say. Anything that you tell them, even if you say that you don't want them to say it or to know it or to use it, they'll use it. They will be jotting it down. It'll be in a notebook. There will be a record of it. So you may be told by the police that they want to speak to you as a witness. Maybe they think that you saw something or you were involved with something. Maybe you phoned the police and you want their assistance. And that's because they're conducting an investigation into someone or something else. Now, note that even if you go there as a witness, if you say something and it implicates you in some way, you can be charged with an offense. So you can go from being a witness to being an accused. So my advice is always call a lawyer if you know you're going to be speaking with the police. So if they contact you, even if they show up at your house unexpected, you want to start talking to a lawyer and figuring out what to say and what not to say and what your rights are. Let's talk about detention. So once the police have come in contact with you, regardless of how that's happened, whether it was a random act, whether it was deliberately them seeking you out, they come to your home, you arrange a meeting, they are allowed to prevent you from leaving long enough to answer some questions. So if they say to you, I'm here, we're investigating this crime, I want to talk to you about these certain things, from that point on, you're not allowed to leave. Now, this is not for a long period of time. I don't want people thinking that they're going to be held for hours or days. This is just a very brief period of time. You are not arrested. They can do this to investigate a crime that they think you were involved in, if they think that you were a witness to something. But there has to be a legal basis for the belief. This isn't just a hunch or suspicion. They have to have an actual reason that they can say why they're talking to you, why they want your involvement. In addition to keeping you there, they may do a pat down search. And that's what you kind of see on TV, where you're up against the wall or the hood of a car and they're literally patting you down. They're checking for weapons. They're checking to make sure you don't have anything on you. Again, it's a very brief search. They're not going through your pockets. They're not telling you to remove clothing, nothing like that. So it literally is, they're just checking to see if you have a weapon that could be a risk to them or to others. So what's an arrest? So they've met up with you in whatever fashion they have. They've started asking the preliminary questions. They may or may not have done a pat down search. And now they have reason to believe that you are the suspect that they're looking for in this particular crime, and they're going to place you under arrest. So now you physically can no longer leave, and this can be for a longer period of time. So the police physically take control of you, and you'll often see that they'll actually put their hands on you, and they'll usually put you in handcuffs, and they'll usually escort you to a police cruiser car or a vehicle and take you to a station. So that's the difference between detention and arrest. Detention is them asking some questions. You're not allowed to leave. If after the detention, they figure that you're not involved, you would be allowed to leave. They would let you go, and that would be the end of it. Arrest means that you can no longer leave. So what happens upon your arrest? You have a right to silence. So whether you have been detained or arrested, you do not have to say anything more once the police have determined your identity. So anytime you're dealing with the police, as long as they know your name, your address, and your date of birth, you are not obliged to say anything more. Now, I want you to be aware, the police are allowed to lie to you. They're allowed to trick you. They're allowed to try to convince you to speak. They may say, oh, it's in your best interest. We just want to hear your side of the story. Maybe you've already spoken to a lawyer and they've told you not to say anything. And they may say, well, you know, your lawyer's not working out in your best interest. They may say that they have evidence that they don't really have. They may say there's eyewitnesses. They might say that there's DNA. They might say that there's video surveillance. Just because the police are telling you those things doesn't mean they're true. They may or may not have those things. So that's what I want you to understand. You're not obliged to take tests such as polygraph. Those are lie detectors. You see this on TV and the movies all the time. That is not something that you are obliged to do. Polygraph tests are unreliable. That's why they're not admissible in court. Very rarely do we hear that polygraphs have been taken and what their results are. You can have false positives, false negatives. So they may say to you, well, if you've got nothing to hide and you're telling the truth, just take this test. Again, speak to a lawyer first. If they really want you to take a test, you can take a test separate and apart from the police. You may have to take tests such as sobriety tests. Now that's what we see on TV where, you're pulled over, they think that you've been driving impaired. They make you walk a straight line, touch your nose, recite the alphabet backwards, things like that. They may also do other things. They may take a breathalyzer. They may take a swab from your cheek. They may do DNA testing. They may take a blood sample. But all of those tests should only be agreed to after you've spoken to a lawyer, because a lawyer will tell you what tests, if any, you should be taking. I want to talk a little bit about your state of mind when you're dealing with the police. You should be of sound mind when dealing with the police. So what does that mean? You should be mentally well, you should be physically well, you should be of an age where you have an understanding, right? If you're under the age of 12, you shouldn't be dealing with the police. You should be sober and without significant mental or physical ailments that would interfere with you knowing what you are doing or saying. Now, that's not to say the police aren't going to deal with you if you're intoxicated or if you're having some sort of mental or physical issue. That happens quite often. But if you have serious mental or physical issues and you require the attention of a medical practitioner, the police should be taking you to the hospital for an evaluation. Now, they may or may not. You're entitled to ask for it, and they should be complying with that. So that's something that I want you to be aware of as well. So what are your expectations upon arrest? The police have to tell you that you are under arrest and the charges that you are facing. So they have to actually say the words, you so-and-so are under arrest and you're being arrested for this charge, this crime, this offense, or these multiple offenses. They may do a more thorough search. They may start emptying your pockets. They may go through your purse or your knapsack or whatever personal belongings you have. They may search the area that you've traveled. So if you were on foot or on a bike or in a vehicle, maybe they think you threw something. They will look in that area. They will look immediately around you. If you've been pulled over in a vehicle, they may look in and around the vehicle. And we're going to talk about that more in a few minutes. The vehicle can only be searched if it's in relation to a crime that they think you committed. They don't just get to automatically search your vehicle each and every time. In certain circumstances, they can do a more invasive body cavity search if they think that you've ingested or are hiding items such as weapons or drugs. Sometimes people will swallow drugs. Sometimes they'll hide a weapon inside their body. Again, that's got to be specific to the crimes. They can't pull you over for theft of a check and then start, doing body cavity searches. It's got to be in relation to whatever the charge is. Sometimes they can take DNA or other bodily samples, again, if it's related to the offenses that you are charged with. If they find DNA at a crime scene, they may want to get a sample of your DNA to compare the two. If it's a sexual assault and there's DNA, they might want to do some testing. Again, all of that takes place after you've consulted with a lawyer. So what are the police obliged to do upon arrest? They have to provide you with a phone call to a lawyer. And you see this on TV all the time and in the movies. You are entitled to a call to a lawyer. Now, maybe they want to reach a particular lawyer. Maybe someone's trying to get a hold of me and for whatever reason, they can't reach me at my phone. They try my office line. They are allowed to take as many calls as it takes to reach a lawyer. If they can't reach the person's lawyer of choice, they can call Legal Aid Manitoba, which is government-funded lawyers that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. They do not have to wait for you to speak to the particular lawyer that you want. So if you say that you want Kathy Bueti to be your lawyer, they've made a few calls to me, they can't get a hold of me, they don't have to wait until I'm available. They can speak to someone else from my office, or if they can't get through to anyone, they can call legal aid or another lawyer. Once you have spoken to a lawyer, regardless of who that lawyer is, you're only allowed the one phone call. It's not like you get to keep phoning them back and having more and more discussions, unless the charges change. So for example, maybe they arrest you for a drug offense, and the first call you have with the lawyer talks only about the drugs. Then all of a sudden they find out, oh, there's not just drugs, there's weapons, and maybe there's, even a dead body or something else. Now they're allowed to call you back and say, look, the charges have become more serious. Now, that being said, if they charge you with one theft and then they figure out it's actually 3 thefts, that's not going to be enough to warrant a new phone call. It's got to be a significant change. And then you will be allowed to call the lawyer again. And again, it's just that one time. The phone call must be done in private. The police can't be present in the room with you. They can't be in the car with you. They can't be listening, and they can't be recording. One of the first things that I will say to a person when they phone me is, are you alone in the room? I will also ask them to listen and see if they can hear people talking on the other side of the room that they're in, because often they're not in soundproof rooms. So for example, if they tell me they can hear the police officers chatting outside of the room, that means that they can also hear what we're saying. So in those circumstances, I would say, I'm going to do most of the talking. You're going to answer just simple yes or no type questions, and then we'll take it from there. It has to be in private. Sometimes it's done in a room that has audio or video recording capabilities. Sometimes those things are accidentally left on. So we ask, is the recording devices turned off? We give the police officers a few minutes to turn it off. If they've accidentally left it on, they don't get to use that. They actually have to destroy it. They have to tell us that it's happened, but they don't get to use it. Sometimes you're pulled over on the side of the road in a remote area. Maybe you're using an officer's cell phone in the back of the cruiser car. Sometimes the police officers, if it's the dead of winter and it's 40 below, they're sitting in the front of the cruiser car. That's not in private, right? So I would either ask the police officers to step outside of the car for the duration of the call, or if they're not able to do that for whatever reason, then I would again say to the person, I'm going to do most of the talking. You're just going to be listening and responding in short, brief answers where they can't understand what we're saying. Youth arrestees. So young persons are treated differently than adults. Adults are anyone 18 and over. Youth are from 12 to 17. If you're under the age of 12, you can't be charged with an offense. So if you're between the ages of 12 and 17, these people are given additional rights. They have the right to have a parent, a legal guardian, or an adult they trust, and or a lawyer present when they deal with the police, especially if they're being questioned and asked to give a statement. They don't have to have those people present, but they get that choice, and it's entirely up to them. And if they say yes, they want those people present, then the police have to hold off on their questioning until those people can be present so that the youth is not going through it by themselves. In addition to that, the parent or legal guardian must be notified by the police of the charges, even if they're not going to be going to the police station and they're not going to be present. And that has to be done in a timely fashion. It's not like they deal with the child and then 5 days later they provide notice. It has to be at the time they come in contact with that child. If they take the child to the police station, they should immediately be contacting the parent or legal guardian, letting them know where they are, what they're charged with, and then if the child wants them to come, then they should be allowed to be able to come. Let's talk a little bit about searches. The police do not to conduct a search unless the person has been detained. So if they're stopped for the questioning leading to an investigation, if they've been arrested, they've been told that they're under arrest, or if the person agrees to the search. So if a police officer says to you, can I look in your bag? Can I look in your purse? Can I check your pockets? And you say yes, that's enough for them to be able to do that. If they ask to search your house or your car, same thing. If you agree to it, they're allowed to do it. The police can only search if they think there are illegal items or items that were used in a crime. The police can search your physical person if they are looking in a place. So let's say they have a search warrant, they go to a home, they're looking for illegal items, maybe drugs or weapons, and maybe they think that in addition to whatever's in the house, maybe you have these items on you. They're allowed to check your person and see if you have those things on you. The police can search you and or your vehicle if you have illegal alcohol or cannabis and it's being transported or consumed. So let's talk about that. So alcohol in your vehicle is supposed to be in the trunk. If you don't have an actual trunk, maybe you have a hatchback, it has to be in the far back corner of that vehicle so that you couldn't just turn around and reach it. It shouldn't be open. It has to be closed and sealed. If you have people that are in your vehicle, in the passenger seat, in the back, and they're drinking it, that's a problem. If you have people who are underage consuming alcohol, that is a problem. Same with cannabis. In Manitoba, you have to be 19 to have cannabis. If you have somebody under that age consuming it, that's going to be enough to have them pull you over and do a search. Cannabis also has to be transported much like alcohol. It should not be sitting on the passenger side of your vehicle. It should not be in the center console. It should be in the trunk, maybe in a locked glove box, something like that. The police can search your person if you have open liquor or illegal cannabis in public. So if you're walking around, we don't live in Las Vegas. We don't live in Europe where you can walk around and have a drink and be walking the streets. That's not the circumstance here. Even with cannabis, you can't just walk around and be smoking a joint, even though it's legal for you to have. And again, if you're a youth. Now, so people will say to me, well, what about Folk Fest, right? Folk Fest has lots of alcohol, lots of drinks. People are walking around from campsite to campsite and throughout the venue. Technically, the police could be issuing tickets to all of those people, but they choose not to, but they could. And certainly if you're causing a disturbance, if you're over intoxicated, again, if you're a minor, those sorts of things will come into play and you could still be ticketed. There are many, many people every single year who go to a festivity like Folk Fest or something like that, certainly not during COVID times, but in the past, and they get tickets. The police can search you if they have concerns about the safety of themselves or others. So if they think that you have a weapon, any sort of a weapon on you, they are allowed to search. So let's talk about what happens as a result of the search. So if the police are searching for a particular illegal item, so let's say I'm looking for drugs and I'm either checking a home or I'm checking your person. And in addition to find the drugs, I also find a weapon. Now I'm going to be charged not only for the drugs, but also for the weapon. If they go into your house looking for something and they see a whole bunch of illegal things there, you can be charged for each and every illegal thing that they find. So you should be aware of that. They don't have to say that they're looking for drugs and weapons and anything else. If it's illegal, you're not entitled to it. Once they're lawfully in your home or lawfully searching your person, they are allowed to charge you with multiple offenses. So let's talk about when the police come to your home. So we've already said that they're allowed to do this. They can come to your home unexpectedly, or it might be a planned meeting. And they can. Once they're there, you have to deal with them in some fashion. But you do not have to agree to have them attend your home for a meeting. If they say, you know, we want to get together with you, we'd like to come by your house, you can say, no, I prefer that you don't come to my house. I would rather meet you somewhere else. And maybe that's for a variety of reasons. Maybe you've got a family at home, or maybe it's a multi-unit dwelling, or maybe you've got nosy neighbors. In a meeting, regardless of where the meeting takes place, whether they come to your home, you go to them, you still have to identify yourself. They still have to be able to know who they're talking to. So it's the same full name, your address, The address might be obvious if they're at your home, and your date of birth. You still do not have to tell them anything else. They have to be able to know who they're dealing with. And if you tell them anything misleading, you could be charged. What about when police want to enter your home? So, police can enter your home with or without a warrant in certain circumstances. They can enter your home to arrest someone. So if they think that somebody is in there and there's a warrant out for their arrest and they need to be arrested in relation to a crime that they think has occurred, they're allowed to come in and arrest that person. You're not allowed to have somebody hiding in the basement, avoiding the police and saying you can't come in. Once they say, I'm here to arrest this person, if they're in your home, they're coming in. If they have a search warrant, and we're going to talk about search warrants for the next little while, but if they have a warrant, that's something that a judge has authorized them to do for a set period of time to look for certain things, then they're allowed to enter your home. They can enter the home with the consent of a homeowner or a tenant. So again, if they ask you, hey, can we come into your house? And you say yes, that's enough for them to come in. Now, it has to be the person who owns the home. So if it's an apartment block, it could be a landlord, or it could be a tenant, but it has to be somebody who's tied to the house. It can't just be somebody who's visiting, right? If I'm at your house for dinner, the police come to the door, I don't get to say, yeah, by all means, come in and search. It's got to be somebody who the home belongs to, or they're owning it, or they're renting it, they're tied to it. Their name is on a lease, they've got some sort of standing. They also have to be an adult, right? You can't ask a 5-year-old child, can I come into the house? No, it's got to be somebody who has that proper authority. Now, there are certain times when there's emergencies and they're coming in no matter what. So sometimes a 911 phone call has been made from a cell phone or from a landline, and they get disconnected or they hang up. The person doesn't call back. Sometimes they will try to phone back and see, but if there's no answer, they are coming to that location to make sure that somebody is not in distress, and they will come into your home if nobody's answering the door. If there's a safety concern, if they think that there is imminent danger, someone is in danger or imminent harm within that establishment for whatever reason, they're coming into the home. In certain circumstances, to remove personal belongings. If there's been a domestic assault that's taken place, one person is asked to leave, the police can go in and gather the person's belongings and take them with them. If they suspect that there's a drug laboratory, because they're very volatile and they can actually explode, they will go in and look and make sure that it is safe and secure. So regardless if anybody is giving consent, they'll ask. If there's no one there to ask, if no one's home, but they have any of these reasons, they're going into the house. So what happens once the police have a warrant? First of all, the police officers have to state that they are police officers. Sometimes they're wearing a business suit. Sometimes they're wearing sort of SWAT tactical gear like you'll see on TV or in the movies. But they have to be able to say who they are, and they have to announce it and announce it loudly. They don't get to just start breaking down doors. If they have a warrant and they say they have a warrant, let them in. Do not argue with them. They are going to be coming in regardless. So you do not want to risk getting charged with obstructing justice or any other issues. Simply let them in. If you don't let them in, they're coming in anyway, and they may come in by force. So you don't want there to be property damage. You don't want there to be charges unnecessarily. Just cooperate. So let's talk a little bit about warrants. First of all, the warrants are actually a piece of paper that is given by a judge. It's an actual court order that authorizes them to do certain things. They are supposed to show you the warrant. So they should physically have this piece of paper with them. They should be showing it to you. If they don't show it to you, you can ask to see it. If they don't have it on them, let them in anyway. You can ask for a copy. If they have it, they'll give it to you then. If not, you can get it later. Let's assume that you're handed a piece of paper. I want you to look at it, and I want you to make sure that the information is correct. Make sure the names are the proper names. Sometimes they have old information or different information, and the name on the warrant is actually not you or your family in that house, it's the people next door, or it was somebody who used to live there. So make sure the names are right. Make sure the address is correct. Sometimes, especially in an apartment block, they might go to the wrong unit. They might go to unit 1 instead of unit 11. Make sure they've got the right place. And every warrant is only valid for a specific time frame. So for example, the judge will say, you can only go in for the next 24 hours. Well, make sure they're within that time frame. If it's before that time limit or after, they actually have to go get a new warrant and get a new authorization from a judge. If you are not provided a copy of the warrant, don't worry. It will be available in court. You will get a copy, or your lawyer will get a copy. You'll be able to look at it in detail. If there are problems with the warrant itself or the way it was executed, it can be dealt with in court. That's why I say don't become confrontational with them at the scene. It can be sorted out later. So what does the warrant allow the police to do? So first of all, there are different types of warrants. There's an arrest warrant, which allows people to arrest someone, even if they're in a home. And you'll remember I said that they can come into your home to arrest someone. So it'll say that we're looking for so-and-so. We want to arrest them on these charges. We have reason to believe that they're in this address, and then they're allowed to look. A search warrant allows the police officer to enter a home to search for illegal items or items that may be related to a crime. So weapons, drugs, stolen goods. And it'll say on the warrant itself, and I'm going to show you a warrant in a moment, what they're looking for. Now, remember, it's not just limited to those things. If they walk in looking for weapons and they find a meth lab, they're going to be taking a lot more than just the weapons. But there has to at least be something outlined on the warrant for what they're looking for. The police are allowed to enter a residence with force if there is no one home. So they come to your residence, no one's there, they're knocking, they're identifying themselves, it's within the hours they're allowed to be there, they will break down the door and enter the home. If they're being denied entry, if somebody is saying, I'm not going to let you in, I want to see a warrant, I want to talk to my lawyer, they may just say, we're not waiting for all of that. We're coming in and we're coming in now. So they're going to come in whether you cooperate or not. Any property that's damaged is at your expense if you don't cooperate. So if you say, I'm not going to let you in, and you could have let them in, and they end up breaking down the door, you're not going to be compensated for that. So the point that I want to make is if they're there, if they say that they have a valid warrant, they say that they have a reason to be there, accept that at face value. I mean, as long as you can identify that they seem to be police officers and it seems to be legitimate, then let them in. Now, this next slide, you may or may not be able to see very well, but what it is I've just taken a copy of a warrant. I've taken out the confidential information just so you can see what it says. So at the top, it says warrant to search. It would have a police officer's name. That would be the police officer who requested the warrant. And it would say the name of the person that they're going to be dealing with, so the accused, and what they're looking for. So in this example, they're looking for cocaine, proceeds of crime, packaging material, and score sheets. So they think that it's some sort of a drug-related offense. They have to make sure they have the name of the accused and the accused address. Both of them have to be there. They have to be correct. This one's from Winnipeg. This one goes back to February of 2014. But the warrant expires at midnight on February the 21st of 2014. So if they come in at 12:01 in the morning, it's too late. If it's the next day, if it's the 22nd, they're out of luck. They can't use this warrant. The warrant will be signed by a judge or a justice of the peace. It will be dated. These are all of the things that you should be looking for. If any of those things are missing, if they're incorrect, so if they've got the wrong name, they've got the wrong suite, you want to tell them that before they come in. If there's something technical, maybe it's not dated or it's not dated properly, You can draw it to their attention. That may or may not be enough to stop them from coming in. It's also something that your lawyer and you would be looking at afterwards and dealing with through the courts. So that's typically what a warrant may look like. They may be slightly different in format. They might have different information. Here, they're looking for items. If they were looking to arrest a person, it would say they're here to arrest so-and-so. But that just gives you an idea, if you're presented with a warrant, what you should be looking at. Let's talk about driving interactions. Sometimes the police deal with you when you've been driving. So first of all, the police can stop vehicles. First of all, they can do it for a particular reason, and sometimes they can do it randomly. They are allowed to assess if a driver is impaired by alcohol or drugs. So if they think that you have been drinking or consuming cannabis or other intoxicants, even if it's medication that's been prescribed and you've taken too much of it or taken it incorrectly, or maybe you've mixed it with alcohol or drugs, if they have that suspicion for whatever reason, maybe it's your manner of driving, maybe they've been told, maybe they saw you pulling out of the parking lot of a drinking establishment or a liquor mart or a cannabis store, they are allowed to pull you over and to start investigating that. They are allowed to check if your vehicle is in working order. So sometimes you'll get pulled over because your tail light is burnt out. Or maybe you have a flat tire or your headlight's not working. They are allowed to pull you over in those circumstances. They are allowed to pull you over to ask you to produce your driver's license and insurance. Now, what you should know is before a police officer even pulls you over, there's usually two police officers in a cruiser car. One drives and one sits in the passenger seat and works the computer. They can actually pull up a license plate and find out if the car is insured or not. It will also show who the registered owner is, and they may be able to check if that registered owner has a valid driver's license. So if something comes up on their computer and they think that you're driving without insurance or driving without a license, they are allowed to pull you over to have you verify that in fact the things have been registered. Maybe there's a delay in their computer system. Maybe you've renewed recently, it hasn't been updated. But they are allowed to check for those things. They are allowed to pull a vehicle over if they think that you have committed a highway traffic offense, if they think that you ran a red light, that you did an illegal turn, if you were speeding. They are allowed to pull you over for those reasons. Once you've been pulled over for any of those reasons, they will ask you for your license and registration. Why do they do that? They do that because they want to be able to identify you, right? Your name will be on there, your address will be on there, your birth date will be on, certainly a driver's license, not necessarily your registration. They want to make sure they're valid, right? Especially if they think that you're driving without a license or driving without insurance. And they're going to be watching to see how easily it is that you get those items. Are they in your glove box? Are they in your wallet? Are they in your purse? Are they in your console? Are you able to go and get them easily? Are you having difficulty? Can you not understand the questions that are being asked of you? Especially if they think you're pulling you over to check your sobriety, they're going to say, well, did they appear drunk? Did they appear like they were able to do these simple tasks? You have to produce your license and your registration immediately. You used to be given a period of 7 days. If you didn't have it on you, you could go to the police station and show them that you had it. That is no longer the law. You have to produce them on site. So keep them in your vehicle, keep them in your purse, keep them in your wallet, keep them in your glove box or your console. If you can't produce them, you can be charged with another offense for not having them, even if they're completely valid. I have a valid driver's license, I have valid insurance, but I couldn't produce it, I couldn't verify to the officers, you could be charged. Know that you are always being assessed by the police every time you deal with them. Whether it's a random interaction on the street, whether you're in a vehicle, whether they're coming to your house, whether you're going to meet them, everything you say and do is being noted. It's being written down, they're making observations. If there's more than one officer, all of the officers involved are outlining everything that you're doing. the police can pull a vehicle over randomly for sobriety check stop. So all of the other ones were reasons why they could pull you over, and the random check stop is no reason at all. You simply happen to be traveling down a certain road at a certain time, and they're going to ask you questions. So they've now pulled you over in a vehicle for whatever reason. When and if are they allowed to do a vehicle search? So usually the police cannot search your vehicle without a warrant unless you give them a reason to. You can give them permission to look in your vehicle. So if they say, can I look in your vehicle? And you say yes, now they're looking in your vehicle. Just as I said, the police are always assessing you when they come onto a scene and they engage with you. They will be assessing the inside of your vehicle from the moment you are pulled over. From the moment they ask you to roll down your window, they will be looking inside. They are allowed to look in the windows. Even at night, they are allowed to take a flashlight and look in the windows. They are, however, not allowed to look in the trunk or in the very back of a hatchback. Though if there are windows and they can see into them, as they're approaching the vehicle, they may very well look in. Vehicle searches. Whenever that happens, the police may search your vehicle if they have a strong reason to believe that there are illegal items in the vehicle. It could be weapons, it could be drugs, alcohol, cannabis, stolen items, something related to a crime. The police have to believe that these items would be lost or destroyed if they had to wait for a warrant to arrive. So in those circumstances, they won't have a warrant on them because they weren't expecting this encounter, right? They pull you over on the side of the road. Now they think that you're impaired or you're smoking cannabis or you're transporting it illegally or whatever the case may be. They obviously don't have a warrant. They can ask for a warrant to be issued over the phone, but it still takes time to process. If they think that something will be lost or destroyed, for example, you have drugs, they think you're going to swallow the drugs or you're going to throw them out the window, then they are allowed to search your vehicle. And that vehicle search may lead into the trunk. It may lead into other areas. In certain circumstances, especially in drug cases, they can actually start tearing panels off of the vehicle, looking in tire wells and all kinds of things. So those are some of the general concepts that I wanted to cover with you today in terms of knowing your rights and dealing with the police, when you can be stopped, how you're supposed to interact, how they're going to interact with you, searches with warrants of your person, vehicles, your home. I'm going to open the floor now to questions. And again, those can be in the Q&A. Again, I'm not going to be answering specific legal questions about cases you might be involved in or things like that. But if you have any questions about anything that we have spoken about so far, now would be the time for that to take place.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. That was great. I haven't seen any questions popping up yet, but we can give it another couple minutes here.
Okay.
I'll just say while we're waiting, I'll just mention we have 3 more sessions over the next few days. The next one's tomorrow evening at 5. That one is about real estate law, first-time home buyer's guide. And all of these sessions are free to attend. You can find out more about them at cba-mb.ca. I don't see any questions coming in. So,
and it doesn't have to be restricted to the topics I've covered. If there's other questions about criminal law or your rights in dealing with the police, whether it's detention or otherwise.
Just getting a thank you in the chat on a great presentation.
Good.
So yeah, I don't see any questions coming in. I don't know if you want to stick around for a bit longer or just assume that probably you've answered everyone's questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll stay on as long as there's still participants. If people want to log off, that's fine. And when we see there's no further questions, then we'll end the session.
Sure. Oh, I do have one here. Could you address device searches?
Yeah, so that's something that we're now seeing that we never sort of used to have to deal with. So what's happening now is, for example, if you're crossing the border, You may have a police officer or an immigration official who says they want to check your devices. It could be your cell phone, it could be a laptop, a tablet. And as you can imagine, our devices hold a lot more personal information than they ever did before. A lot of these laws around search and seizure were developed long before we ever contemplated technology. So what I can tell you is that your devices can be searched, and you should be very careful what you keep on your devices. So for example, because I'm a lawyer, you can imagine that I must have all kinds of personal information about clients on my devices, especially my laptop, if that were to be looked at. So in my circumstances, what I typically do is if I know that I'm going to be crossing a border or something like that, I won't bring that information. I will simply bring another device that doesn't have it. Another thing that I will do is I will have a password on it, and I will say to the officials, there's confidential client information on there. It's password protected. I'm not going to allow authorization to it. Sometimes they will insist. And then sometimes I will say to them, you may be in breach of solicitor-client privilege. And like I've said throughout, the one thing you don't want to do is become overly confrontational or combative with these individuals, because they can get a warrant. They can get the authorization that they need. So you may say to them, please get a warrant. They may get a telewarrant. They may hold you for that to happen. That may take time, especially if you are trying to go catch a flight or something like that. You may not want to do that. If you have information on your device, they will ask if there's a password. If there's no password, they can actually start going through your device. A password at least provides you a level of protection to say, I don't want you on this. This is making it clear that I'm not consenting to this. Now, as you can imagine, often people will have illegal information on their child pornography, drug trafficking information, who knows what, and they may put a password on it. That's not going to exempt them from the police officers getting whatever information there is. There's enough for you to say that I don't want you to do it, and you can say it very clearly. I'm not agreeing to this. I want you to get a warrant. I have a password. I'm not giving you that password until you have proper authorization. They still may be entitled to look at that information. I can tell you that there was one time I was doing a case in Fort Frances, Ontario, and I was traveling from Winnipeg to Fort Frances, and I did a number of trips over a period of time, and I was going through the States because it was a little bit faster. And on my fourth or fifth trip, they actually pulled me over and said, we want to go through your belongings. And I said, well, I'm a lawyer. I've got client files in there. I'm not going to let you go through my client files. I didn't have a computer device, but I certainly had a cell phone at the time. And they said, I said, you can go through all of my belongings, but I'm not letting you have access to my files. And I explained why I was there. I was able to explain the court that I had just attended or that I was going to. I was able to explain the case. They could look it all up. They could see that. And then they were satisfied with that, and they didn't go through my client files, but they did go through my other belongings. And when I had a discussion with them as to why they were doing that, they were telling me that there was a drug corridor and a significant amount of drugs were being moved down that same route. And just because of the frequency that I was going, that caused some questions. And I was dressed as I was dressed now. I mean, I was wearing a suit, I had a briefcase, I had a business card. It was very clear. I had a briefcase full of files that I was going there for a legal purpose. So I don't want people to think that their devices can never be searched. They certainly can in certain circumstances. They have to have a reason for it. They can't just check everybody's personal device for no reason whatsoever. If you do have confidential information, especially if you have client files, whether you're, a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant, whatever, make it known and make sure they're doing it properly. But again, do not be obstructive to the point where you're going to get charged with obstruction of justice. It's simply not worth it. But yes, your devices can be searched.
Great, thank you. If anyone has any other questions, now's the time. Well, I think that might be it. So maybe I'll just thank you again, Kathy. I really appreciate it. This was a great presentation.
Absolutely. And if anyone has any questions, they know where to reach me. And otherwise, I hope it was useful to everyone.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. And have a great day, everyone.
You as well.